Think of the grill, the picnic up in Connecticut on a good afternoon of this July. It used to be somebody would say, go into plastics. Now would you say to some kid, go into banking? Would you tell some young kid out of college to try to apply at Barclays? Is there a future in American banking?
I think there's a future. I think, like a lot of industries, we get overexpansion. And I think during that 2005, 6, 7 time period, we got overexpansion. People were going into the business, maybe who didn't really have a passion for the business, and because that was the place to go. So I think there's still a future, but I think it's going to be narrower, and it's going to be for people who really want to be in that business as opposed to this is the place to go.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking to answer your question, when I arrived in New York in 1997, the conservative thing to do was to go to an investment bank. The exciting thing to do was to go to a startup. That may have flipped.
Within that, Bob, and the churn that's out there, do you see more consolidation? I mean, my experience is when we get a time like this, things start combining.
When you have an industry that's not growing or shrinking, they generally don't tend to get in front of the curve. They tend to be a bit behind the curve. And so organizations usually are adjusting to a lower growth rate more slowly.
Right.
So I would guess that there's more consolidation to come.
Vonnie, what I heard from Mr. McFarland was, I think I heard him say we're a credit card company trying to think what to do with the rest.
I was just going to say, he made a big point of the fact that revenue growth is where it's at and where he wants the bank to be at. And revenue was down, 9% last year.
How do you create revenue, Bob?
Yeah, where is it going to come from?
Well, you go back to your animal spirits nominal GDP. If nominal GDP growth is running along at 3.5% to 4%, and you've got an industry that's taking a smaller share of the pie, it's tough to get revenue growth in that environment. So,
one thing I'm fascinated by, and you've had real-world experience of that Bank of America office was, in the old days, I don't know if it's still there, right outside St. Paul's Cathedral. Do you need people in every city? Or do you think the new technology will help the John McFarlands deal with a more limited geography?
It really depends on what type of business you're in. If you're in the wholesale institutional business, you don't need as many people. More and more what we're seeing is banks are going back to their retail roots. They're going to credit cards. They're going to wealth management because that's where the growth is. That's where the retirees are consuming banking services. So there you do need people on the ground in the local areas. And you heard Mr. McFarland talking geographically about where they concentrate their business. And it's not global. And, for them, I didn't hear Asia.
Do they still do Premier League soccer?
I don't know. This is what I'm wondering.
Sponsored.
What about the Barclays bike? What about the Barclays Center?
Exactly.
That's what I want to know. What about the naming rights? Do those go when you cost cut?